Good afternoon. It's good to see a lot of friendly faces and some new faces. John and I look forward to a lot of questions. We're not going to talk very long at all because we really want to hear your questions and provide some answers to you. But what we'd like to do is just kind of set the stage up front. I'm going to start with a little bit of the why, and John's going to talk a little more about the how. So, we've both been in this job for about a year, a little over a year. We worked very closely together. Our offices actually abut each other in the building because there's that close connection between the two of the operational entities within the agency. The bottom line for us is we are through this activity trying to drive reducing the timelines of intelligence and decision-making cycles for warfighters and policymakers and continue to drive integration of the intelligence apparatus. And what we constantly find is there are, people call them stovepipes, people call them limitations. The problem is, that as we view it, that data, information, processes, technologies, there are a lot of things that are in one-off entities, whether it's an analyst's mind or a system or some kind of process that limits our ability to broadly share information and data across the community in order to allow the greatest resources to be leveraged against it. And so what we're trying to do is break those down, and we're breaking them down through object-based production, the D&I mandated approach to intelligence in the future. So we're taking a look at both how our analysts think, how our production folks think, and the processes and tools and technology that we have to enable them to be able to do their jobs differently. Some of the things that we're looking at is, if anyone was at the discussion yesterday, we talked about the GEOINT mind and being able to apply both the art and the science, blending both the analysis piece and the foundation piece of the information that we put together against intelligence problems, and looking at things a little bit differently. I do believe, I hear often that our analysts need to think differently, and I don't think that's true. Not as a wholesale universal truth. I believe our analysts do think differently. I believe we have failed to enable them to do their jobs differently. And so what we need to do is look at our ability to make data universally accessible at rest to anyone who needs that data. We need to be able to capture how our analysts think, the models and the hypotheses that they have, in a way that we can put that out there for other people to look at and play with and red team and produce counter-analysis in order to make sure we're coming to the best conclusions that we can. And I do believe that we need to be able to find ways for the analysts to interact with each other across the community using different tools. And we need to be able to apply standards in order to be able to do that without limiting the analyst's ability to interact with the data. So the standards shouldn't be something that limit us. We should be able to apply the standards in a way that allow data to talk to each other across the community. So John's going to talk next about some approaches that we're taking both on the collection side and the modeling side, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So for the last couple of years at the Symposium, I've talked about NGA's efforts to build what we termed Map of the World. Last year I was here and we were actually at the end stages of that. And I point this out because when we first started this effort, we were told it's going to take us 5 years. We finished up version 1 last November in 11 months. So I wanted to point out that what we're trying to do here is not impossible. It is actually very possible with your help. And this is where we have some challenges, and we want to throw those out and work with you as well. And I'm going to point out a couple of things that we've been working with industry, and I'll name a few that we've been working with over the past year that have really brought some change to what we want to go with the object-based production process. So we built out Map of the World, really focused on the foundation GEOINT pieces, and then started bringing in the intelligence pieces as well. A key piece of that, something that those of us who've worked in the foundational realm for a long time, we were very adept and strict to our standards to make sure there's interoperability. One of the major activities that we've had over the past year to ensure that we can bring intelligence and foundation together to meet this object-based production is the extension of our application schema. So a couple months ago, we actually extended and got the first version of the NSG application schema, the NAS, which governs our data interactions, and included the full range of intelligence objects in there. So in the standards real geeky sense, it was a major accomplishment. Something that we've talked about for a number of years, but we put focus and effort on that with your help, and we're able to accomplish that in a matter of months. And this is the type of focus that we need from you all to help us go to here. So from the NAS, then we were able to take our structured observation management activities and really start to focus those. We had a number of them across the agency. At one point, we had 130 different structured observation models. Okay. How easy is it going to be to create a singular object-based production, a one object, one time from 130 different models? It's going to be impossible. So we're bringing all those together now through a number of activities. And what we initially focused on and are changing was the tool to create this. And we stepped back, and Gary's leadership really drove this to say, no, it's not about the tool. We really got to fix the back-end database processes to make sure this works and let the tools ride on top. Because I don't want to tell an analyst, yeah, you can have that tool, but you can't have that one. I really don't care. I want to make sure that we have this application schema set and the database created so that we can tie all this information together and let the tools run on top. Just a few hours today walking around, there are a number of very capable systems to create content, to visualize content, and to analyze content. All have to be driven from a common data model, and now we have that common data model to do that. So now we can start applying the capabilities that you all bring to bear on top of this. And this is really where the focus has been for us going forward. We have continued to build out where we're going over the, actually Gary and I have probably the most of our time over the past couple of months has been spent on building out our program for the 17 through 21 timeframe, and a large focus on that has been on how to bring these capabilities to bear. And not on the back end, but really on the front end, because we've built out that back end structure. Now we just have to build it into our capabilities as well. So as we create data, and then as we create data internally from structured observations and the foundation piece, the big issue, the tidal wave issue, is all the unclassified information that we have to bring to bear to really create an object-based production process. And it will be driven from not only the explosion of small satellite companies or satellite companies in general that are flying, but from the whole rubric of intelligence information, or excuse me, open source information, unclassified information that we want to use for intelligence purposes. As that information continues to be growing more and more a spatial component to it, our challenge from a collection standpoint, from an next-gen tasking standpoint, is different than it has been in the past. We had a finite set of resources and a finite set of targets, and we had to allocate those things. So it was tasking. One of the things I need to think through now is how do we change that terminology, because our challenge isn't to task anymore, it's to focus. And how do we focus? And then one of the challenges we have is to understand where to focus. So there's going to be a couple activities coming up soon where we're going to ask you all to bring your ideas on how to help us focus on this whole litany of sources that are going to be out there. So in September timeframe, we're going to have an industry day where we're going to look really at next-gen tasking and ask four broad challenges that we're going to ask you all to bring your solutions to help us understand how do we look at all of this information, both classified and unclassified, and focus where to look. So Gary's analysts can have a more focused approach to this. Because as we pull this information together from open source, from classified mechanisms, from what we're terming now taskable systems to non-taskable systems, we'll be able to actually create, and the structured observations, underlaid with this rich foundational information, our ability to create the models Gary talked about is much greater. We need more flexibility in the creation of those models and more simple ways to create those as well. We don't want to have to bring in PhD engineers to tweak a system so that we can create a model that will go out and collect information from taskable systems or go out and scrape information from ubiquitous data. It really is going to be about enabling analysts to work side by side with collectors and continue to blur those lines between the two. So as we create models of the future, of future activities, of known facilities, where we know where to look and what the activities are, but also of unknown areas where we want to be tipped off at increased activities of areas that we normally don't look. The Saturday morning when my BlackBerry went off with Nepal, guess where Nepal was on my priority list? Yeah, it was pretty low. But all of a sudden we had to surge to these areas. And it is the ability to gather all this information, pull it in, and enable analysts to support those, in that case, first responders and cleanup efforts, that is our challenge of the future. It is not only the set facilities around the world that we have. So.
So let me go just a little bit further. John mentioned the common data model. And we talk about commonality, and sometimes we talk about enterprise solutions. And I'll just put out there what I've put out in other fora, that I think the search for the elusive enterprise solution is very often futile. We have such a diverse mission, such diverse types of data that we want to use to help answer the questions, that I'm interested in finding the solution that addresses the mission need at that time. And whether that's a process or a technology or a different way to think, that's fine, and let's apply it and let's move on. With all the data we have, everything John talked about, known versus unknown, with all the data we have, and at another event like this I went to, someone said you can't go 5 minutes without hearing big data and cloud computing at one of these events, and it's true. But even with all that data, we don't know everything, and so we need to be able to find a way to make it quick, easy, efficient, but also comprehensive for our analysts to be able to go through the data that they need to be able to answer their questions or ask more questions about what they're doing. And so I think we just need to take a different mindset, not only from an analytic perspective, but from how we look at the solutions to drive object-based production in a way, like I said earlier, that makes the data shareable to anyone at any time, where it sits and where it's created, and to plug in holes of data when we find new ways to do that. So with that, I think we're going to open it up for questions.
And we have 7 so far.
All right. Well, any number of people promised me hard questions, so.
I think there's one in here.
Okay.
So this one is not it. How are you incorporating social media into this model? And this is to both of you.
At this point, I would say we're not doing a great job of incorporating social media, and maybe John will disagree. I think we have to do a much better job than we are doing. So we need to be able to find a way through, whether it's through IT solutions that leverage cross-domain capabilities and identity access through non-attribution, et cetera, to be able to pull that stuff up. It's very frustrating for analysts to have to go to different workstations to find different data and aggregate different information against their problems. And so from my perspective, it's an opportunity for folks who are here today to apply those. It's done, but it's done through brute force right now.
No, really not much to add. It is one-offs. It is a continual process, but it's one-offs in that sense. It's not a routine process that we brought in together. And again, it is a nut that's easy to crack. We just have to bring it into the into the agency. So, looking for more of that.
Can you speak to the changing roles and activities of image analysts versus data scientists versus image scientists, and how will they work collaboratively?
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is for all of our folks, the key is to think as an intelligence officer first, right? We're all attacking intelligence problems. Each of us may have been trained, educated, or gained experience through different work roles that allow you to leverage different capabilities more or less against a problem than some of your colleagues. That said, I do think to attack the problems in the most comprehensive way, we need teams with all those capabilities somewhere resident in the team. And so we've had some discussions within the agency about work roles, and particularly image analysts, geospatial analysts, and how we look at them. And I do think we need to take a little different look at the work roles, start thinking more, as I said, as intelligence analysts, but recognize and leverage the data science capability that's out there, the image science capability, which we have a tremendous amount of in the agency, and apply that to hard problems differently than we do right now. What I don't want anyone to think is that any of our analysts will have all of those capabilities. I think it's a fruitless pursuit for us. It would take a long time to get someone to the point where they knew enough about all 4 of those roles to be productive. But I do think there needs to be some cross-pollination. Do you want to add anything?
I'll add 2 work roles that were left out that fall under my organization, cartographers and data stewards, and also our collection analysts. As I mentioned, this whole panoply is sources that are going to be coming and are already don't require infinite vice finite. So our job has to change from load balancing to focusing. So data science will be more and more important there than where we have been in the past, to look for the anomalies in the in the pool so that we can focus the finite taskable resources that we have. So as we start to build out now collection models from the current processes that we have, we really have to apply more data science approaches toward looking for the anomalies in activities, baselining the norm, looking for things above certain standard deviations that will tip us to areas to look for the finite resources. So the data analytics will become part of what we have, not only what we have, though.
You discussed how you're trying to change the environment for analysts. What are you doing that will appeal to millennials?
I've gone first on all the other ones.
Yeah,
Go
great,
ahead.
thanks. Good question. Maybe we should bring a millennial up here to answer what would appeal to them. So I think the way that we present information, the way that we make it available, one of the, Director Gardill has mentioned Pathfinder a couple of times. One of the things that I really would like, everyone has our idea of what's going to happen there, I believe. One of the things that I really hope to get out of that is what is a better way to present our information? They had some discussions earlier today with a system that was being created, but it looked like it was designed in 1995. Okay, because it was probably requirements process were written by someone probably who did that job in 1995 and now are in a job that they're doing something else and have writing those requirements. We have to get more modernized approaches toward how we user interfaces to again bringing in the content that is needed. I love the director's talk today about walking in, checking our smartphone at the door, and then locking it up, and then walking into a lockdown work environment. We do have to open up more of the information that will come in to the organization as well.
So I'll be controversial here and say not enough. We can do, I think, a lot more than we're doing right now. So we're looking at some things on the training and tradecraft front to move away from formal courses and lengthy processes and making training and tradecraft available directly at the user's desktop. But I do think we inhibit creativity with our current approach to the workforce, especially the junior workforce. They are often stifled, and the ideas that they have are often stifled, and we need to do a lot better job in allowing their innovation to bubble up and giving them the freedom to do things the way they look at their job as opposed to the way I look at it or others. Now, that said, I don't want anyone to take away from that I diminish the experience that we have across the Directorate either, because I think the diversity of thought, diversity of experience that we have is necessary for us to address the hard problems that we're looking at.
And this is addressed to you, Gary. On next-gen tasking, what do you need from industry to make progress in 2015 and then again in 2017?
So I'll start with what we don't need, and we talked about this earlier. We don't need something that looks like and acts like and performs like what we already have. So we need to be able to have a way for the source strategist working with our analysts to find a way to leverage, to look at the problem, find out what's needed, what kind of source is needed against that problem, or what might be useful against that problem, and even run some scenarios of different options on how to address the problem, and then leverage the problem when it's needed in a just-in-time scenario, as opposed to having to rack and stack early and have a hard set deck that goes forward. And I know we're moving away from that a little bit, but the analogy, John made this analogy earlier, so I'll steal it from him, is kind of like a trader on the stock floor that's using information real time as it's coming in and deciding where to invest their precious resources in a by-the-second decision-making cycle. That's the kind of approach we need.
An acquisition question. If enterprise solutions are futile, then enterprise contracts are futile? And will we expect to see more focused short-term contracts or smaller contracts or of the like? Thoughts on that?
So Karen Hayes Ryan's in the front row, nodding.
And Nicole, Nicole's over here.
Nicole's over here. She's kind of shaking her head. I'm not sure what that means, but yes. So I think it's a both. I really think it's a combination. I do believe there are certain things that are so large and complex that we need enterprise contracts for, that we need a proven way to build out things that are going to be complex like that. Augmented, heavily augmented, but maybe even tipped toward this side, ability to bring in things in rapidly to test drive in the operational environment, and then to drive those into longer term vehicles. I know Karen's built out, and Director talked about this morning, the Geospatial Solutions Marketplace, which is developed just for that. And she could, right there, ask her, not me, and how to do those quick hits, areas we want to focus in on to bring in smaller contracts to do specific things, almost your precision strike on some of these activities. And we've done some of those recently to bring in either data or technology that we see as promising, to see if those things can work out for us in the bigger term. Last year here, I said I'd talk about a couple of companies we're working with that we've brought in recently. I reconnected with Tim Estes from Digital Reasoning at the conference, and over the past year we brought them in through a small contract to really look at how to do object-based production and let their technology loose on the NES database, which is not object-based, and they were able to really prove out how we can take and objectify that database. Yeah. And then looking, okay, how do we expand that? Bringing in through the BAA that we did on Map of the World Day, another company that we've done some great stuff with, MapLarge, who's here today as well, and brought them in to really do some interesting things on how we can do analytics on this data. And now we're looking at how do we move those things forward into larger, longer-term activities like for the agency. So it's a combination, I believe.
You guys are doing great banging these out. They keep on coming. Gary, object recognition has made huge strides recently, largely because of freely available training and testing data sets, I suspect. Will NGA provide a data set for researchers?
First time I've ever had that question, so I'll say caveated yes. I just need to look into it. But I'm completely open to the idea. So on the object-based or automated target recognition or assisted target recognition, I'm with the analysts on this one. We've talked about it for a long time and not delivered. And so anything that might deliver that, I'm more than happy to help identify that for our analysts.
So what I recommend, whoever asked that question, just maybe meet over at the NGA booth afterwards.
Or I'll just hang out up there.
Okay. And John, yesterday Scott Webster said that there were 100 strategists, each supporting about 40 analysts. What's the future of source strategy or strategists, and what do they do, and how are you changing their mission?
Okay, great. So I talked a little bit about this earlier. So we're already starting. The future's already starting. We're really, first thing, we worked into every source strategist, analyst, every source strategist performance plan that they have to have at least 5% of their strategies automated by the end of this year. So we're driving the automation piece right away. So looking at how we drive tipping and queuing into their processes, how not just to look at where to drive the satellite, but where we can pull in data feeds that will automatically do that. We've had some huge successes there. It's successes for the analysts to identify activity before we could have actually had effective tasking that way. I mentioned that how we want to look at really changing from, I think, tasking to sensing, sense making of all this data. The future source strategist for me, the future collection strategist for me, is going to be the person who can look at all this content that's coming in, and with machine learning and their own knowledge, understand where the anomalies are so that they can drive the taskable capabilities there. It's really leveraging that full scope, and it needs to change from a from a pass-through, this is my target, please collect this at every 3 days, to here's my problem, help me answer this intelligence question. So, and do you want to pile onto that as well?
No, it's
Okay.
what John said.
Yeah.
Okay, and one last one. I will say there were probably about 8 or so other questions that I didn't get to within the time. So for those of you who had additional questions, maybe hang around the area. Okay, Gary, one of the foundations for achieving the most effective and comprehensive analyses is the employment of truly cross-functional, cross-discipline, multi-int, analytical teams focused on common intelligence problems. Furthermore, these teams must understand their customers to deliver maximum consequence. How's NGA changing its organizational structures to achieve this?
So we're actually looking at that right now. John and I have been talking about this for a long time. The duplication and seams that we have between the operational organizations in the agency, and it's not just our 2 organizations. I think there's some opportunities across international affairs and experience as well to bring those teams together in a way that does exactly what the questioner asked. And so we have some ideas we're looking at. Nothing has happened yet, but I expect within the next 6 to 9 months, you'll start to see some new organizational constructs. I will say, I said nothing has happened yet. That's not completely true. John has initiated an effort to have integrated strategy teams where the source strategists are sitting with and working directly with our analysts, and that's already proven to be effective. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, well, quickly, the strategies used to be aligned toward capability. Folks who looked at classified or worked with classified sensors, unclassified sensors, open source information. And so we would sometimes drive analysts internally to NGA, or even more confusing for folks across the community who wanted information. Sometimes they have to go to 3 different people to get the information they want. So we built these collaborative teams now based around regional approaches, so that we address the China issue, the Russia issue, the Iran issue, the counter narcotics issue as a whole, vice by sensor type or data type. So we're moving into more of these collaborative approaches now, and then further on with moving the collection and the analysts closer together as well.
And we both believe that's the approach we need to take, just on a broader perspective, looking at the mission and how we align to the mission.
Thank you very much for an excellent session. I'm sure you'd want folks to know that the NGA booth is right across from the government pavilion. And everyone, please, let's thank our speakers, Gary and John.
Thanks.